Hey everyone, this is Dan B with Strangelove. I hope you're enjoying Game of Chains so far. As we're getting ready to go into phase 3, where anyone can make a chain, I wanted to show you how Strangelove created the Strange consumer chain and how you can use the same process to create your own consumer chain. Okay, so the 2 points in particular that I'm going to be going over is point 18, which is create at least one custom consumer chain binary for a proposal that passes, and then 19, which is submitting the proposal for the create consumer chain. Okay, so the first thing is the binary. So you can use our repository as a template for the binary if you like. It is a public repo. So under github.com, Strangelove Ventures/strange, you can just grab the HTTP URL and clone it. Let me delete it first. All right, so you can clone it right there. Okay, and then you're going to want to put this in your own repository to host because you're going to be renaming this to your own repository. Okay, so you don't want to do it as a PR or a fork to Strangelove or Hypha ICS repo. You want to host this inside your own organization. So I'm going to simulate that by doing it in my personal GitHub repository. I'm going to come over here and say I want to create a new one. We're going to go with one of my favorite fruits, which is an apple. Going to keep it a public repo. We can do a README, and we'll do the Apache license as seen there. All right, so we have created a new repository for our binary. So I'm going to grab the URL for that, and I'm going to git clone that as well too. All right, so we got these two things in there. So now what we want to do is we want to move all the stuff inside of Strange into Apple, and then we're going to start customizing it. You have to be careful when you do this though because of the Git history. So what you want to first do is you want to remove strange.git. Just remove the Git folder from Strange. So we're doing that. And then we're going to copy dash recursive, capital R, lower p, preserve permissions. We're going to copy everything from Strange, so Strange star, to Apple. That's what we're going to do. All right, now in VS Code, we're going to add a folder to Workspace. And I'm going to add the demo Apple folder for our new binary. Okay, that's what we have over here. All right, so now we need to rename all occurrences of Strange to Apple so that when you actually build this, it creates a new binary called appled instead of stranged. So pretty simple in VS Code. Right click on Apple, find in folder, and anywhere that it says strange, we're going to rename it to Apple. Control Alt Enter is a multi-replace. It's going to replace 46 occurrences across 12 files, not folders, files. We hit replace. Then we got to go get that one folder that is named. So under the command folder, there's a folder called stranged. Just rename it to appled, just like that. All right. Then we will do a test build to make sure it works. So go cd into Apple. I'm going to do a little cleanup real quick because I didn't do this before. Move my Apple folder. All right, so we do the build, make install. And then we appled, init, and then your moniker. And you can see that it created a Genesis file, so the binary is working. You can see that it created a folder called .apple, and that folder has all of your configs and your priv validator in there. All right, so now that you know your binary works, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to push this up to your GitHub page. So you can use either the git CLI or the VS Code syntax. I'm going to show you VS Code. We just come over here to the plugin on the left, source control, and you're going to do something like initial commit of Apple, control enter, and sync changes. All right, now if we come back over here to GitHub's page and F5 to refresh, you can see that all those new files have now been added to here. All right, so now that we have the way to get the binary, the next step is to work on the Genesis and all the proposal instructions. All right, so we have another repository that you can copy. If you go into, this is a copy of Hyphas. If you go into Strangelove Ventures /ICS testnets, grab our code here, grab the URL, go back to your root demo folder, which was for me in home socket code local demo, is where I have the strange and the apple in there. We can remove the strange folder. We don't need that anymore. And this time we're going to git clone the ICS testnet repo from Strangelove Ventures. We're going to do the same thing that we did before. We're going to move this into our own organization. So I'm going to simulate that again by doing it inside my personal GitHub. So new repository, we call this ICS testnets, public, readme, license, create. Grab the code URL, git clone, clean that up real quick. Actually, I don't want to do that. I'm going to first do, because I named them the same, there's a conflict to strange. So the one that we cloned from Strangelove, I'm going to rename to strange, and then I'm going to redo my git clone of the ICS testnets here. All right, so now in our folder, we have our Apple chain binary repo. We have the template repo from Strangelove for how to create an ICS testnet, and we have the Apple ICS testnet repo in our own organization ready to go. All right, so just like before, we're going to delete the Git repo or the Git folder from here so that there's no Git conflicts. We're going to copy all folders and files from here into our ICS testnet repo, and then we're going to customize it for our needs. All right, so it's remove rf, ICS testnets, strange.git, then copy rp, ICS testnets, strange star to ICS testnets, copying recursively and keeping permissions of all files inside of the strange repo, minus the git stuff, because we deleted that, to our new repo hosted in our organization. All right, that's been done. So now we're going to add it to our workspace, file, add folder to workspace, and we are taking the ICS testnets one, not the strange one, and adding it. All right, so down here, we can now delete this ICS strange one. So we only have our chain binary and our new testnet repo. All in here. All right, so what's going on here? Okay, so we now have, going back to Explorer mode, we have two repositories in our workspace. We have our Apple chain binary, which I'm going to go ahead and minimize that for now, and our ICS testnets repo. So if you expand Game of Chains, you'll see we have all the chains that we've done historically. So Provider, Sputnik, Apollo, Hero, and hopefully if our proposal passes, because I'm creating this before I submitted the proposal, Strange. So what you're going to want to do is you can copy the Strange folder, you can paste, and we're going to rename this to Apple. All right, and then we are going to find all files and folders inside of Apple. So right click, find in folder, and anywhere it says Strange, we're going to rename it to Apple, and Control-Alt-Enter. This is going to replace a few files that we don't want it to, but it's still the fastest way, and we're going to undo those. Actually, can we choose ones to ignore? I think there's a way to do it. I just don't remember how to do that. So we're just going to say Control-Alt-Enter, replace them all, and then we'll undo the ones that don't need to be done. Okay, so now we have our Apple files in here. So we have a script for creating a proposal, the README that we're going to share with our community on how to create this testnet, the Genesis file that is needed to launch the chain, the startup scripts that were carried over from the Hypha repo. They show you how to basically get this going on a standard Linux install. We at Strangelove use Kubernetes for everything, so we have a different deploy mechanism, but I'm going to keep this focused on how most people are deploying all the other chains. And then the binary. We're going to have to change this, and there's a special way that we're going to create this binary. So the first thing that I'd like to do is kind of go through, let's see, let's start with the README, and we'll see what needs to be updated in here. Okay, so first thing you can do is you can put in a logo for your company right here. So for us, if we look at the preview of this file, actually, because we renamed it, I'm going to change this back to, see how it renamed some things that we didn't want to, like it renamed Strangelove to Apple Love. So we're going to go ahead and undo just that specific naming thing. So I'm going to go back to Apple, right click, find in folder, anything that says Apple Love. I'm going to move back to Strangelove, Control-Enter, and it's going to undo 10 files that got renamed incorrectly that I didn't want to be named. Okay, so now you can see when I click preview, it loads our company logo up here. So you can come here, so that might be the first thing you want to do is you might want to change your logo. So we keep another GitHub public repo for hosting that image binary. So you could do something like that for your company. Okay, the timeline. Phase 3 starts in, let's see, if we go to Game of Chains and we scroll down, phase 2 looks like it ends November 21st. I believe I heard that on the 22nd is when it's the real ending, which is today when I'm creating that video. So by the time you see this, it should be close to phase 3. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to modify your timeline to match up with your goals. All right, so the first thing is whatever day you're working on this, put that date in. For me, today is the 22nd, so that's when I'm going to put down here. You're going to want to know or guess what the proposal is going to be when you create it. So right now we are at proposal 6 on the provider. I know of one other proposal that is happening for proposal 7. So I'm guessing that the Strange chain will be proposal 8, but we'll see if that actually comes true. But yeah, so I made that for the 23rd, which is when I would like this to go up for vote. I'm going to give 3 days of voting. That's not required, but I thought it was a reasonable timeline with the U.S. holiday coming up this weekend. And then the spawn time is when you want the chain to start. Ours is going to be scheduled to start November 27th at this is 3 p.m. Eastern time. And then you're going to want to change this line. So in phase 3, the voting power is going to be distributed where the Game of Chains coordinator is no longer going to have 100% of the voting power. It's going to be spread throughout everyone. So you're actually going to be responsible for doing this and not the Game of Chains coordinator. So this line in general can just go away. So you don't even need that anymore because it's just going to start like any normal chain would start. So it's just literally going to start on the 27th once we have consensus, once we have enough voting power to go up. All right, so then you just kind of go through this very detailed, just looking at everything, making sure it lines up with everything so that your chain, all the chain naming stuff should be done correctly. All the links that were created should still be working. You shouldn't need to update that. What you are going to need to do is update some of the binary information. So we're saying this binary is published in this repo is the Apple D binary. I'm going to verify, is that the name of the binary? Apple D? Yep. It is built in Strangelove Ventures Apple. This is going to be your organization. For me, because I built this under my personal one, you wouldn't really do this on your end, but I'm just going to make this so it works. I would say it was built in the Dan Bryant Apple repo. I would link to it. Strangelove Ventures. I'm just going to rename this to my personal simulated own company repo. Okay. You can see it's going to a tag. So you're going to want to create a release for your repo. So if we go back to Dan Bryant, I'm going to open the Apple repo. And I'm going to come over here to create a new release. And I'm just going to create a tag based on what's in the template, v0.1.0, v0.1.0. Copy it to my clipboard, release title, and description. Let's do that for all three. It wants you to attach a binary here to the release as well. So this is where it gets a little tricky. The problem is that when you build a binary, you're supposed to do a checksum for the binary, which is in the proposal. But the problem is that it never matches. And that's because everyone has a different build environment based on your Go version, based on your libc stuff, all that. So the way that you can kind of get around this is by documenting and building in a controlled environment that always behaves the same. And Docker is great for this. So in the Strangelove template, if you cloned from our repo, we have this in here already. If you scroll down a little bit more in here, you can see we created a Docker container called checksum that allows you to consistently build the same image with a checksum that will always match. All right, so we're gonna use that to actually build the binary. I am missing one thing in here. When you're running Docker, you have the ability to mount files from inside the container to your local machine. And we're gonna wanna do that just so that we can grab the compiled binary. So what I'm gonna do is pwd print working directory. So home socket code local demo, copy that to my clipboard. On this Docker line, after run, I'm gonna do -v, which is to mount a volume. I wanna paste my demo folder :2/demo inside the container. So I'm just putting that in there. This might change based on your home path. I doubt any of you have this exact path, but it might be like whatever your name is here, right? Like that. Okay, so you run this. All right, now you are inside this container. All right, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to clone the Apple repo that you created that's on your repository. So you're going to change Strangelove Ventures here to whatever is yours. And you do not change it up here. This checksum image is maintained by Strangelove. So if you change that to Apple, the Docker image will not run, but you do want to change it down here. So we're going to call this Dan Bryan, but you're going to type in whatever your organization is right here. Control C, and come back down to our container down here. Control V. All right, so we cloned Apple. We're going to cd into Apple. We're going to git fetch to pull down everything. In case it gets updated, we want to always pull down version 0.1.0 once this binary is in there. We'll do that afterwards, but like right now we know it's the same because we haven't made any commits since it's. So we're actually not going to do the checkout right now for the creation, but anyone who wants to verify this, they would do the checkout command. All right, so then we're going to make the binary. All right, and it is made. So the binary gets put into root go bin apple D. So what we want to do next is we want to move the compiled binary from root go bin apple D to demo. By moving it to demo, which is demo up here, because of this volume mount, it's going to also move it outside of the container to our local machine in our demo folder so that we can upload it as a binary here to GitHub, which is running on my local machine. So instead of move, I'm just going to say copy, actually. All right, so I did that. So now I'm done with this container. Well, actually, no, I want to do one more thing in the container. The next thing I want to do is I want to get the SHA-256 checksum. So copy that, paste this in the container. All right, so this is the sum right here. I'm going to copy that to my clipboard, and I'm going to change the value of expected return to that. Then also up here above the Docker command, and what we're advertising to the people that are going to run our chain is what the SHA-256 should be. So I'm going to paste that here as well too. All right. So now we don't need the Docker container anymore. So we can kill that with a Control D or log out. Oh, or exit. All right, so now we're back in the demo folder. Now if I do a ls, I should see the binary in here. Yep, so because of that volume mount, we now have the Apple D binary. And if we SHA-256 checksum this one on our local machine, not in the container anymore, you can see it's got the same checksum because we literally moved the binary from the container to our machine. All right, so now we can take this binary right here and we can attach it here. I'm gonna go to home socket, or actually, what is it? Code local demo bin. Code local demo, not bin. I'm gonna take this binary, Apple D, and I'm attaching it to this release. All right. And then I'm gonna publish the release. All right, so we now have a release v0.1.0, which has a source code and the binary that has the correct checksum. So people can either choose to just grab the binary directly if they trust it, or they can build it themselves and see that it builds to the same exact one that we provide. All right, So going back to our documentation, the binary is published in this repo, appled, using this, Dan Bryant Apple, using this version, 0.1.0, yep, in this location. So we got all that. So this is all correct. One thing that Strangelove likes to do is provide Docker images. You might want to just delete this from here, but feel free to update that too if you want to provide Docker images to your community. But I'm going to delete that from this example of creating the chain. All right, verify binary checksum. All right, so now when your users are looking at this consumer chain, they will say, oh, well, let me run this code and see if it works. So they're going to do the same thing that you just did, run all these commands, but this time they're going to pass the git fetch and say they want to check out version 0.1.0, which is this release you just created. And you can be assured that when they run this command, they are going to get this expected return of 5B, which matches what you say it should be, which matches what the binary really is. All right, so that was a lot just to get a binary checksum match, but I think it's important to do, so I included that in this video. All right, so the binary is good. We're good on there. Next thing is the Genesis file. All right, so we're kind of looking through here. So let's see, final Genesis file with CSV state. Yeah, so you have to wait until the spawn time before you can create the not fresh Genesis, the CSV Genesis. So you can leave that here until it actually launches. Then you're going to want to go back in here and update this with the Genesis of the real Genesis file. Okay, down here is all your data for the chain. So the chain will be called Apple1. It's going to use uApple, standard signed block window. Let's see, Genesis accounts were added. I don't know if Game of Chains is going to help with running faucets for consumer chains, but they might have code that they can share so you can advertise that you're going to have a faucet if you are. For this example, I'm going to take faucet out because I don't know how to do that right now. Okay, this is the Genesis file without CSV state. So this is the one that you copied from our repo, the strange fresh Genesis. We're going to rename that to Apple Fresh Genesis. We'll also rename all these startup scripts that were provided for us. Apple init CV, Apple init SH. This is a proposal that Strangelove created, so just rename that Apple proposal. We're going to delete the stranged binary from the Apple folder. And what we want to do is we want to move in that appled folder from demo to this Apple folder. So what I'm going to do in VS Code is copy path on here. Then down here in my terminal, I'm going to say copy appled to that path slash. So now I have that over here. And then I'm going to chmod 755, which means make it executable, the binary. Okay, so now it's executable. All right, and we'll just double check the binary again. We'll SHA-256 sum appled ends in 7b5, which is correct according to the README, 7b5. All right, so that's all good. Back to our Genesis file again. Or sorry, back to the README. Okay, so the Genesis file without CSV state is called Apple Fresh Genesis. And now you need to tell it what the checksum is for that. So back in the demo folder, and go into my ICS testnets. Then I'm going to go into Game of Chains, then Apple. All right, I want to know what files are in here, and I want to know what the SHA-256 sum of that is. So SHA-256 sum of the Apple Fresh Genesis. Copy that to my clipboard. And I'm going to replace this with that new checksum. All right, that's the Genesis file. Persistent peers, when you launch the proposal, I don't think you're gonna know this unless you have your node key and IP stuff hard-coded in how you build. But I would recommend just waiting until the spawn time to update that. Well, not the spawn time, but wait until you have that configured. These peers will represent, it's not going to be the GOC coordinator, it's going to be your company. So I'm going to call this the Dan Bryan validators. Yep. And you know what? I would probably just replace anywhere it says GOC. In VS Code, you can do Control D to multi-select. So Control D, Control D. I'm selecting these three, looking down to see if there's any more in this paragraph. There's not. And I'll call it Dan Bryan. So the Dan Bryan coordinator, or whatever your company or your org is, right? We put there. All right. So that's for the persistent peers endpoint. This validator node has overwhelming majority. That is not true. During phase 3, we're not going to have overwhelming majority. So you can actually probably just delete that line. That doesn't matter. This is probably good to keep, that you want to let people know that they need to participate in this chain or they will get slashed if this proposal passes. All right. These are the scripts that were provided on the other repos like Sputnik, Apollo, and Provider. They're just copied in. So these will all work just the same as they have before. All the references were updated to use the Apple chain info. So that looks all good. All right, so your README should be good. There shouldn't need to be anything else done in the README until you know your endpoint information. All right, so then the last thing you gotta do is work on the Genesis file. All right, so in Genesis, the admin module, you can delete that. You don't need that in your chain. That was just something that we were testing at Strangelove. So we can delete that. All right, these accounts, there's gonna be a few in here you wanna change. So this is our address right here, the F5R. So you can double click that, Control D to multi-select, and just keep hitting Control D. It found 3 occurrences, or sorry, no, it found 2 occurrences that went to the top. So we have one there and one here. So you're going to want to replace this with whatever your operator address is. So that would be your account operator, not your developer address. So for simplicity, I am just going to call it, I guess I'm just going to change R to S, just to make something new. But you're gonna make it be whatever yours is. All right, so you have that up at the top here. And then you also have it down here in the bank balances. So you are giving yourself a lot of UApple. This won't impact your voting power at all on the provider chain, but if there's anything you want to do on your Apple chain, you have a denom that you can use this for. I believe these other 2 are for the coordinator addresses. You can probably get rid of those. I haven't tested that yet though, so I'm leaving those in. Denom metadata, you can leave that blank. Scrolling down through here, I think all this is fine how it is. If there's anything you have to change until, you can change your params if you want to. Like you could choose to make your slash fraction downtime less aggressive. 1% is pretty aggressive for unavailable. So like you could choose to do this to be like 0, 1%. But I'll leave it as this because I haven't tested that personally. Keep scrolling down. Your chain ID, Apple1. Keep scrolling. All right, what you want your Genesis time to be. So you're going to go back to what you said in README, and you're going to look at what you wanted your Genesis time to be. Genesis time is spawn time. So you copy the date from here, go back to your fresh Genesis, and you paste it in here. And it just so happens to be about the same, just missing a couple of zeros, but same thing. Okay. Let's see, I believe that is everything you have to do. Let me do one last glance through this. All right, yep, all right, your Genesis is good to go. So now you are ready to create your proposal. All right, so let's close that, close that, close the README. All right, so the next thing you want to do is go to Apple proposal.json over here on the left. And I'm gonna make this fit a little better. That's not gonna fit, never mind. Okay, so the title, create the Apple chain. If you press Alt-C in VS Code, it's gonna force word wrap. So that allows us to see it all. So this is the proposal to create the Apple consumer chain. Visit here for details. So we got to update this. So it's going to be, instead of Haifa, it'd be your organization, which for me is Dan Bryan. Your chain ID, Apple1. The Genesis hash, this is going to be and the binary hash. Okay, so you want to go back to your README to get this information. So we go down. We know the binary hash is this, copy, go back to the proposal, paste, save, back to the README, going to the Genesis hash, copy, so this is for the fresh Genesis, proposal, Genesis hash, paste. Did that go right? What did that do? That is it word wrapping? Yeah, it's word wrapping, okay. And save. All right, so spawn time, binary hash, Genesis hash. Did we do this one time? I don't remember. I'm gonna do it again just in case. In the README, looking at the top for spawn time. And pasting that in, save. Okay, and then the deposit is in provider tokens because these proposals are going on the provider chain. So do not change that to Apple or whatever your one is. Okay, so that looks good. Then the next step would be to actually create the proposal. So you have this shell script that we created for you called create proposal. You're going to want to change this to whatever your operator account is. So I'm changing it from R to S, and this should match to what's in your Gaia wallet. So if you do Gaia D keys list, it should match that. So you can see here, mine is R, but you would want to load the key for S or whatever your operator account is. All right, so then you're going to do Gaia DTX gov submit proposal. It's going to be consumer edition, then the name of the file that contains the proposal, so Apple proposal JSON, because my proposal and my script are in the same path. From account, so it's going to load in this address. You could also use a friendly name of ICS if you wanted to, or whatever you called yours. Wherever you keep your keyring, I like to use backend file. The chain ID is going to be the chain ID for the provider chain. It's going to be provider, and then gas auto. So you're going to do that. You can actually do this because it's going to prompt you to sign it. It's going to fail actually because I have to change this back to my address, which is R, to show you a demo of this running. All right, so it's going to create a proposal. And all you have to do is yes, and then enter, and it would create the proposal. I'm not going to do that right now, but what it would do is it would create a proposal, and then you would want to get that proposal number. So Gaia DQ Gov, and like you'll have to take a guess at what the proposal is. It's going to be whatever the latest one is. It'll probably be like 9, 10, 11, depending on when you see this video. I'm just going to pick one that exists right now. So 6, I believe, was for Hero. You can see that your proposal is on chain, and you can just kind of double check all the information. You can see when the voting starts, when the voting ends. You can verify, what is this? Oh, that's for a stop consumer. Let's look at another one real quick. Let's look at 5. I believe that was the start consumer chain. Yeah, okay. So that was for the Gopher chain that just is about to launch. So you can see it's got the Genesis hash, the binary hash, the spawn time. And just to check one thing out, I'm going to go to proposal 2, which is Apollo, and look at the Genesis hash in Apollo and compare it to what they said in their README. Yeah, so they did that for the fresh Genesis. They used that hash right there. And then after it launched, I believe that you can change that to the new Genesis hash if you want to. Do they do that? Final Genesis without CCV state. You can see how this one's different from this one. And then they added in their seeds once they knew it. Okay, so yeah, so that will create the proposal. And then you need to start advertising to the community. So just ping Discord, start telling people about your chain, get people on board. Strangelove is happy to participate in any consumer chain that you launch while the testnet is running. And I hope this has been helpful. If you liked it, please let me know, and I'll see you around.